Good morning, everybody. The webcast will start in 2 minutes. We are still people connecting, and Javier Oshriaga, the chairman of Geothermal, will make the introduction.
I will close the door of my office so nobody comes in.
Javier, maybe I think we can start. We have already a lot of participants, more than 100.
Yes, we can start. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome, all of you. We have a very good audience today. It's a very happy day for us in the Geothermal panel. And the idea is today to present our new strategic research and innovation agenda. I would like, first of all, to present our panelists today. First of all, Philippe Dumas from EGEC. He will act also as moderator in our session. We will have a question and answers opportunity, and also Philippe will talk about the funding opportunities and what opens now with the new landscape of programs and instruments of the Commission to really promote research and in our area. So I think it will be extremely interesting to hear about these new opportunities and what comes next. We are also the pleasure to have our two co-authors of the SRIA, Philippe Blum and Rick Pasquale, who have co-authored the technical chapters B and C. Myself, I have worked on chapter 8 about the technologies, and I will present this part. So just let me first start with a general introduction and a general view on what is our agenda. I think you are looking now at my screen. And so I would first of all value very much the fact that this is the first panel in the renewable heating and cooling technology and innovation platform that releases its new agenda. The document is available on the web page of the RHC. You can find it easily if you go to publications, and it's that's public and available since some days ago. So I will just talk about these agendas, this strategic research innovation agenda, which as I said, it is the first in its kind from the new period, looking ahead into the 127 Horizon programs. It is an input from our sector on what are the priorities and what are the outlook for the technologies to be developed in the next decade within the geothermal sector. We have to also think about other funding instruments that would be around in the next period, like the new Green Deal provisions, the innovation funds, the Clean Energy Transition Partnership, and there will be different instruments, but all they need some input from the sector. They need some vision, some strategy, which is coordinated, which is agreed upon the different stakeholders in each of the sectors. So it is very important to have a departing document that really puts our wishes and our views on how technology and non-technology aspects too should be developed within the sector. So I think this is exactly the role of our agenda, and I think it's very timely that we are now there with our document, which has been a long journey. We started with, let's say, in Offenburg 2019, with a list of people that volunteered to really help us with from their experience and their vision to start with this document. After the meeting in Offenburg, we had a follow-up meeting in EGEC 2019, where, let's say, we decided to focus on three main areas. Let's say what could be technologies and resources, hybrid system integration aspect more and more important, and also to have a very strong focus on non-technical topics, which really make a lot on the market uptake of our technologies. So this gave rise to a lot of hard work in writing, discussing. There were many versions. In about May 2020, we had the document ready from the technical point of view after many discussions with a group of authors, and we had a lot of also fine work of the editors from EGEC, which did an excellent, I think, work in shaping this document, which also looks quite beautiful. And I think this is important to have a consistent, technically consistent, but also nice to look at paper document to really base our let's say our strategy on. The document has the chapters you can see here in this slide. We will focus today mainly in chapter 3. Let's say we will discuss now in next let's say which are the topics we are going to promote within the Commission in the next years. So this will be our part, but I also would like to stress that there are very important things to see in this document, to read, and so I will really encourage you to read and comment about the document. So as the vision, we also have discussed what was in the past the technology targets, indicators, where there's let's say through a discussion about the KPIs, and if we can improve our key performance indicators to make them more interesting for the sector and more aligned with what are the, let's say, the interests of the geothermal developments. There is also a deep analysis about the different funding, the set plan, and which other actions are really connected to what is the agenda. So I think it's a very interesting, very dense document to read, and also at the end of the document there is an implementation plan in which we have put some figures that they are based on the, let's say, the past investments of the Commission, of the industry on geothermal. So I think they are quite realistic, and hopefully the let's say this let's say financial figures can be, let's say, adopted, and we can go in line with that in the future. So just to give you some very, let's say, brief snapshot from the introduction, we have seen a growth in the market in the last 2012-2020 period. This is the period of our last year. So we have seen a steady increase in the installed heating and cooling geothermal to 25 gigawatt thermal, including heat pumps and, let's say, deep systems. We have seen now more than 2 million units, shallow geothermal units in the market, and the market is increasing for about a rate of 100,000 units each year, and more than 300 geo districts in Europe. So what we can say at the difference from our previous, let's say, period is that now geothermal really is something that is known all over Europe. There are not anymore some countries that are geothermal, but in every country we can see geothermal systems from some kind, And so we are in another phase of the technology, but it does not mean that there's not still a lot to do. That we have still a lot to do, but we also can say that from the R&D funding, from our request in our last agenda for about 400 millions, we have seen projects for more than 300 millions. We have still to do at the end of 2020 last calculation, but really there has been a lot of going on in terms of EU projects in the last period. So, and also we can see that essential parts that from the topics that we included in our last agenda were really adopted, and they came in the form of work programs and in form of let's say from the different instruments. So we can say that there was some success in adopting some of the topics of the agenda from the EU Commission and from the other funding agencies. So I think this is the way to go. We have to still see what are the, let's say, the things to do in the market and detect them through our documents, make a coherent vision, and try to see them reflected in the different working programs. And then we have also, of course, from the stakeholders, put on the table good projects, good proposals, and look ahead into how to make the technology happen. What is to do? So very generally, geothermal, we can say, is very far from its potential. We are still a small part of the big pie of renewable heating and cooling technologies. And I must say also now, as let's say as chairman of the RHC, that they look to us with hope. I must say. So from the countries, from the Commission, there is a lot of hope on geothermal. They are really looking at geothermal as a solution, important solution. So we have to look how we can get up to our potential, how we achieve scalability, which is very important, how we can grow, how we can improve the market condition. And obviously, it's not only a technology there, but also other aspects of market conditions are important. And therefore, I think we have put a lot of stress in our agenda into the non-technical aspects, which really will improve the landscape and make our, let's say, technology more competitive. There are also technology challenges, not only market aspects. We have the big thing of the digitalization, integration. So we are seeing more and more interest in how the systems are combined, not only within heating and cooling technologies, but also with the electric part. So we are within the RHC in a strong dialogue with stakeholders from the electric part, like for instance the ETIPS net, and we are really looking at how we can really combine technologies, integrate and digitalize our systems to make them more affordable and easy for the end consumers. We need to look at cost reduction, obviously, and this is still a lot to go ahead on that, and many more aspects we are going to discuss today. So with that, I would give a very special thank to all the contributors to the agenda, especially to the section supervisors, the authors of the different chapters. Also, thank you very much to the editors. They have done an excellent work, and to the people who have commented and who have helped us to really make this document as it is now. So with that, I will give the floor to Philip to continue with the instruments and the funding.
Thank you, Javier, for the kind introduction. And indeed, this document is quite nice to read. It's quite long, so you have some time, no hope to have all the details. We will try to present them chapter per chapter later, but no, we thought it was maybe an opportunity today to also show you what are the current funding opportunities. I'm trying to show my screen. So what we have seen last week, it was the publication of a new fund that we want to report to you, is the Horizon 2020 Green Deal call. So maybe you have been familiar. Horizon 2020 was the work program for European Union 2014-2020. But in the framework of the Green Deal initiative launched recently by the European Commission, they updated the work program and launched new calls. The new calls are now open for a few days, with a deadline you will see in January. What we can see from the update is quite interesting. There's a lot of opportunities for geothermal, especially geothermal heating and cooling. So I really encourage you to look at the call. You have a link. The slides will be available. We just highlight here 4 topics that are of interest. In the energy topic, you have the one on renewable energy-based system for both district heating and cooling and cogeneration. So that it's of directly interest. You will see later how we detail that in our research agenda, the research and innovation needs. The second topic, which is a bit fashion today, is geothermal lithium for the next generation of batteries, but it could be combined also with different exploration for district heating and cooling and cogeneration. There's also in the chapter on building a reference to geothermal heating and cooling and underground thermal energy storage for building and renovating. So you will see that. I don't go to the detail. There's a lot of reference for building renovation. It's part also of the upcoming communication from European Union on the renovation wave and building renovation, a large initiative launch next month. And in that, there's some research and innovation needs. Last but not least, you know that in geothermal, we have a lot of technologies, and one is de-icing. And here, there's a reference to that in the chapter on transport for green airports and ports. So I recommend you also to look at that, as it's not a direct opportunity, but an indirect opportunity. There's a request for having renewable de-icing and heating and cooling solution for green airports and ports. So that it's really fresh, it's really new, published last week. As I said, deadline 26th of January. So what is the situation with COVID-19? Indeed, the geothermal panel were used not only to present you funding opportunities, but also to allow you to do networking during a brokerage event. With a particular situation of this year, physical brokerage event will not be possible, especially before 21st of January, but my colleagues from the commission team of EGEC, also contributing to the geothermal panel, will try to find a tool for online B2B event that we plan to organize also in October. So stay tuned, look at the news. We will try to give you opportunities for networking, sharing project ideas, or looking for partners or proposing your contact details. So that will come next month. But have in mind this call, which is open. Another call that is of interest for the geothermal heating and cooling sector is the Innovation Fund. The deadline of the first call, the call is open already since in June. We speak here about 2 categories, large-scale project and small-scale project. So large-scale project will be more for cogeneration or district heating or industrial application, small-scale more for geothermal heat pumps, shallow geothermal. The first call is only for large-scale project, okay? You see that the deadline is 29th of October, so next month is a bit late for doing networking, but maybe you could join an existing consortium finalizing its proposal. We expect the second call to be open for small-scale project. I know how you're familiar with Innovation Fund. I cannot go to the details today. It's quite a complex system and scheme. But have in mind that it's for renewables, energy storage, but also, as mentioned, energy intensive industry. So how can geothermal system can also help to decarbonize the industry. And you have some upfront payment, as you can see. So it's interesting for deep geothermal, for de-risking project. But if you want to have more information, we have some information available on the EGEC website, and there's a fantastic European Commission website explaining you all the details. And the team working Innovation Fund is also really open, so I encourage you to engage with them. I don't mention an open call. So as I say, Horizon 2020 Green Deal call is open, Innovation Fund is open. This Innovation Fund will be open from January next year. but we see that as an interesting new fund for energy infrastructure investment. With a focus on Central and Eastern Europe member states, we expect a lot of money available for that. So keep that in mind. Motion Fund will be launched in January 2021. We'll have more details on that, but that is particular interest for infrastructure investment. I'm coming now to another kind of instrument. It's not a call. It's a new funding following the financial economic crisis we are currently living. The Commission has answered with a recovery package. It's both grants and loans. The decision is not only from the European Commission, also from member states, but the decision is to be taken in the next weeks and months. So it's why I encourage you to look at that. So we speak about a large amount of money available, not only for energy, not only for geothermal, it's for many sectors and many technologies, but there's a room also for geothermal, for grants or loans. Here, what is important is that you liaise with your ministry at national level. Ministry, you have to see if it's Ministry of Energy, Economy, or the research department. But if you have already some project in mind, and some of you have already sent to us, we can forward them to the European Commission. But together with some information given to European Commission, but also to your national contact point, you will see if your project could be funded. We speak here quite a high-level TRL, so it's more for innovation than for low TRL with research components. Last but not least, as an upcoming also funding, it's the next program, so Horizon Europe for 2021-2027. The work program 2021-2022 is currently under discussion. The first draft has just been done by the European Commission, but there's still a lot of to be developed. As you know, the member states, also the national contact point for Horizon Europe, will also play a role. So I encourage you to liaise with them to see if research topics, notably from the research agenda, could be better reported. Already, we could see there's a lot of opportunities for geothermal and cooling, so it's really great. We thank the European Commission reporting many opportunities for the sector. As I say, it's just a first draft. So a lot of improvement will be done, but already you could see there's a topic 100% renewability and cooling and power in buildings, which is one of the priorities also of the research agenda. Focus also on retrofitting combined heat and power, on innovative renewable energy carrier for heating. A lot of focus also on storage. So here we have always to highlight the role of underground thermal energy storage in boreholes or in aquifer, but we know that there's a lot of to do, and it's really well written in our research agenda. So really, it's really interesting to look at the research agenda as really a source for project ideas, and as you can see, some priorities are highlighted in the work program, so you can really match both. As already referred to Horizon 2020 Green Deal call and other instrument, there's also today a focus on three areas which are also opportunity for geothermal. Of course, the decarbonization of the building stock, the decarbonization of the industry, and it's really grateful if it's the final version of the Commission proposal to have a distinction in temperatures for the industry. Indeed, low or medium temperatures, 150, where geothermal here we can really tackle this issue and this temperature range in many areas in Europe with deep geothermal, but also for higher temperature, there's also some opportunities. So, but it's good that we see this such a distinction. As mentioned by Javier, market conditions or non-technical barriers are also important. In the research agenda, we have a chapter on them, and there's also in Horizon Europe the plan to have some call on market uptake measures. So here it's open door for you to also see how we can improve market conditions. I thank you for your attention. Maybe you have some questions, but as I said, today the topic is more to present the research agenda. Here I just presenting funding opportunities. We'll have a specific webinar in October to detail these funding opportunities and to allow you for having some brainstorming and networking. I thank you for your attention and I give back the floor to Javier.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I will try to share my screen now. I hope you can see the screen.
I confirm, but it's not in full mode. Yeah, it's full.
It's there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Philippe, for this. It's really interesting. As I said before, it is very timely to have our strategy agenda now released because, let's say, the funding and opportunities are there, and we can really answer to some of these programs I think in a coordinated way. So I will now start with the, let's say, the more topical, the more technology-related presentation of the different topics of the SRIA. So to give you also ideas and suggestions for future. So I will start with the RA, which is the area which was dealing specifically with the technologies. So from the technology point of view, there could be some highlights here from the agenda that could be valuable to mention. First of all, that we had a starting point from the last SRIA, from the last strategic research agenda in 2012, where we did a lot of, let's say, basic definitions of what are the meaning of the different technologies. So and these we felt that they were still valid for our SRIA. There was not a change in the technology, but the concepts were still valid. But there were differences now in how the market is evolving, how the technology is evolving, that we had to account in our agenda. I think the most relevant one was to rather depart from this more segmented view that we had in the formal agenda, in which we're talking specifically about shallow geothermal, deep geothermal, and try to avoid a little bit this, let's say, this very sharp separation of both technology. And there are many reasons for that. First, we see more and more that there are systems which are neither shallow nor deep. They are more or less in between. The temperatures, the technologies. So our technology is really very flexible. It has many aspects, and we needed a more holistic vision of these technologies, more in terms of what is the resource, what is the technologies for exploitation, rather to talk about sharp differences in technologies between shallow and deep. More cross-domain applications are more and more visible. So we see also the hybridization with many technologies. So really sometimes geothermal is only the part of a solution, of a renewable heating and cooling solution. There is also a very, let's say, close cooperation with the other areas of renewable heating and cooling, like bio, solar, and we see this cooperation as a strong point. I think this has made a lot in the vision of the Commission to give our sector, let's say, the visibility we need to have. So I think this hybridization, integration, cross-domain applications should be more and more on the focus of our strategic research and innovation agenda. Another important aspect is not try to start from scratch. So as I said before, there are many projects ongoing. There were some of the technological needs were already tackled in our projects. So to be credible, to be really coherent with our sector, we had to have a discussion on what was achieved in these previous projects and how this effort should be continued. Sometimes in some of the projects we see that there are low TRL levels that should be, let's say, increased in the TRL level with further programs and so on. And so we try to make a coherent timeline in some of the technologies in our vision, and also to have some evaluation of what were the success or the, let's say, the achievements in terms of KPIs during these last years. So there's a, let's say, a thorough exercise of looking at what are the achievements in different projects, and even sometimes we detected that the KPIs itself were really not easy to follow. So that we needed some redefinition, some better, let's say, explanations of what are really the KPIs of the projects and how they can be better integrated in the monitoring of the projects. Another important aspect here that was also different from the previous SRI is the fact that we, at that time in 2012, we did not have a deep geothermal ETIP. So we had let's say the deep electricity production somehow integrated in our own SRIA. That meant, for instance, that we had, for instance, topics like EGS, which is a rather electric technology or a technology for electric exploitation of geothermal resources, integrated in our agenda. So this had no more sense here. And also there are other areas which were well covered by the deep geothermal ETIP 3. So this we had to coordinate somehow, and we had to, let's say, come up with something which is different, but also has to take into account this other important document which was already released some year ago. So I think these were three aspects that we had to account for in our vision, and for that we, in our technology, let's say, development of this SRIA, we decided to focus on the following areas which are important to be accounted. One is the focus on the medium depth, let's say, technologies. I'm sorry, I have my battery reclaiming my attention, so I will take 1 minute. This medium depth system, they were not before, and I think this is an interesting area of development. Also to have a special attention of underground thermal storage, which is also a big highlight in the Commission. Let's say the need for technologies to store heat is more and more important in view of this more and more integrated heating and cooling system, and also heating, cooling, and electricity system. It was mentioned before the big interest that there is in the Commission to use also technologies in a crossover way, for instance, in extraction of metal. And I think this was a very interesting idea, and we have seen in this first course that this idea has come through, and how to combine geothermal and, for instance, metal extraction technologies. I think there is still, or we think that there's still a need for a more efficient and more techno-efficient solution in closed-loop systems. So there will be also an area there. And last but not the innovation in geostructures. Geostructures, I will comment later a little bit more in detail, is an area which has not been really, which has not have this strong deployment that it deserves, and that needs really strong input from the research part. So going topic by topic, I will just try to explain a little bit what are the main objectives of all of these areas, what are the ideas behind, and then in a second slide I will comment on the more specific aspects in terms of what are the key challenges and what is the, let's say, the KPI. So I will try to be brief and mention what are the key objectives here. For instance, in these geothermal systems, what we should call medium depth, let's say 500 meters, means that we are, it's not a strong, let's say, figure in terms of that has to be 500 meters, but it just means that we are not in the typical shallow domain of 100 to 200 meters, but and not in the deep geothermal domain. But there are a lot of unutilized and unexploited geothermal resources in a temperature range from 30 degrees up to 150 degrees in these depths, that could benefit a lot of increased technology development, decreased costs in drilling, better materials, even plastic materials. And I think this could be a focus area specifically also for cities, in which we can see in some cities in Europe more and more dense systems, so that you have to basically go deeper, really to have a resource that is not affected by nearby geothermal exploitation. So I think in this area there is a lot to do let's say, make this technology more available in terms of temperatures, in terms of availability of resources, and filling this gap between the shallow, which has a limited capacity and low temperature, and the deep, high capacity, high temperature systems. So there's a world in between that we could try to develop, and it could have a strong impact in the geothermal sector. So we need to define new range of applications and concepts in this area, and let's say the actions we have devised in our agenda would be to first to develop really these new materials, technologies. We are specifically thinking about how new materials, how new, for instance, also drilling technologies, business concepts could be there, or could be developed to, let's say, boost this area of applications. Also, the cost-effective solution to increase the thermal properties of ground could be an area in this regard. Let's say that means that sometimes you can also affect with, let's say, active technologies to increase, for instance, the conductivity of the ground around your exploitation, and this could have a strong impact on also the profitability and the let's say the solution. Key performance indicators we were thinking about here was the reduced drilling costs. Cost of drilling is obviously here a key factor in trying to explain it. Here we are in a domain in between, let's say, the heavy costly deep operation and the more lightweight drilling operations in the more shallow sectors. Obviously also to reduce operating costs and to increase the conversion efficiency of this type of systems. Regarding the second area, the new generation high temperature ETIPs, what is these three talking about? The objectives here are very, very important here. We have to think about the fact that there are countries like, for instance, Netherlands or Germany, which are thinking about the large-scale utilization of seasonal storage in the underground. So we are seeing more and more deployment of system ATS systems or system based on the underground as in the waters, the underground hydro resources that could be used to a large-scale utilization of the energy or the storage capacity of these aquifers and systems. This needs technology. This needs a better understanding of what are really the key factors which affect, let's say, the efficiency of this reservoir, or moving towards concepts of new materials, of this also utilization of temperatures which are higher, even beyond the 40 degrees common temperatures we are using nowadays. The second area is also to move forward of utilizing new concepts, materials for the utilization of BTS technologies in large scale, also as heat storage. So we have seen in past projects different small scale, let's say, advances in what the use, for instance, of PCM materials to store heat, but this has not been done in a large scale. So I think we need also to move forward here and to put BTS also as a possibility of a large scale, let's say, affordable, economically feasible technology to store heat seasonally or daily. This is another of these main, let's say, key challenges here. The four, let's say, key actions we devised in our sphere is here a better characterization of the formations, which is a key aspect here. We have seen hydrogeology models. We have to see here modeling tools that really are able to capture and to monitor and follow what are the temperatures in this in complex system in which we are basically open and closed systems together and on a large scale in cities and districts. So this needs new tools here for a better characterization and understanding of the resource. Also on the impact of water quality, which is obviously let's say a concern here, treatment technologies, conversion efficiencies, and also in this last area of BTS, we should also see better or cheaper PCM technologies, more piloted towards our, let's say, needs, how they interact, for instance, with the ground, how they work in DH system operation. So because there is a need over Europe, in this renewable heating and cooling agenda to have a massive storage of heat, also in connection with electric systems and with other types of energy sources. Here we talked about key performance indicators which are closer to, let's say, to large TRL, let's say financial risk, conversion efficiencies, even what is the utilization of wastewater heat surplus. This is connected also to the idea of heat surplus from other sources and how we connect our geothermal source. If I go over to the area 3, combined heat and power and metal extraction technologies, I'm really not an expert here, but we saw a possible area of interest here in combining geothermal with mineral extraction, and basically lithium is something which is in the agenda. You know that lithium is a key ingredient of battery production, so we see here a very interesting connection between geothermal and the future massive deployment of batteries, lithium batteries. And if we can see here some let's say key area of research, it would be we detected the objective of to build some first of its kind larger scale demonstration. There has been low scale demonstration of this, which seemingly point to let's say a feasibility of this technology, but we need to scale it up, and we need also to see what is the let's say the market prospect of something like this, which is obviously very complex. This ranges from a suitable site selection to what would be the financial model in which you really have a cross-domain application in which you combine geothermal energy production, mining all together in one model. And obviously the launch of a demo would be if all this let's say pathway works, could be let's say the last phase of such a let's say vision. The production heat capabilities would be here obviously the main KPI indicator of if this works or how this technology could work. In closed loop solution, we are basically thinking of two main areas. First, the reduction of drilling costs, which is obvious, always let's say our main weakness here. We always are thinking about how to reduce capex in shallow geothermal system, how to be more competitive, how to let's say remove the barrier of first cost, and this goes through improving drilling. Drilling nowadays is still cumbersome operation where you need people, which is sometimes risky in terms of health, safety. Robotization, we are seeing robotization, automation in many areas of industry, and why not trying to go deeper, to deepen this reduction in cost through the more intensive robotization and automatization of drilling operation. But also we've seen a really interesting breakthrough in, for instance, materials, plastic materials with new properties in terms of conductivity. In 4 projects we are monitoring, grouting new PCMs. So I think we think here is an area that could be there is still a need to let's say to push these new materials into higher TRL values to make them industrial ready for industrialization, and this needs further let's say further also in the geometries of our closed loop solution. We have seen let's say new developments. So this is obviously an area to still work on to bring these products to the market and to the sector. Obviously, also there's always a discussion on the antifreeze. How if we have we could have some improved materials or fluid liquids for the antifreeze could be also a very interesting development. The key actions are listed here. They more or less reflect what I've been talking about. We have also have mentioned here the new improved very shallow closed loop systems for semi-urban and rural applications, because we see more and more interest in having systems that are very easy to let's say to install, and sometimes the very shallow let's say systems are let's say have a good competitivity. They are very easy to install, and there could be new concepts there to bring this closer to the application. So basically, also in the area of refurbishment of buildings, in which let's say the economics is very, very important. So here we have been really monitoring the former KPIs, really looking at what are the technologies that could really produce reduction of costs in the unitary cost of drilling here, and what are the electricity or energy production costs. So these are the KPIs we are really would like to see improved in the next decade. And finally, I would like to make a specific mention of geostructures. It's a really thrilling and area which possibilities are huge, but we lack really an integration of the design of the building with the geothermal design. So I think this is the main area of where improvement is needed. We had previously some project like Gabi, and there are also other experiences at country level which have pointed at the possibilities of this technology to integrate the building structure or even the large city structures like metros and tunnels and so on with the production and the store of heat. And the technologies and methodologies have still to be refined. They have to be standardized. They have to be made easy to understand for architects and engineers that are, let's say, acting in the first phases of the building design. And this needs or requires a lot of input and a lot of cross let's say collaboration between different areas of the building and construction design. And this improved integration at all levels is really a key aspect here, and should be, let's say, promoted through projects which really let's say put together all these domains. Key actions are, we need still ground investigation here, because as the experts in geotechnics point out, there is strong need to understand really especially in the long term, what is the effect of the, let's say, thermal active structure and the activation of the structure also from a temperature point of view, specifically if you have also freezing and other phenomena going around in the building, in the soil. And also we have to improve our thermoactive building design and architectural design methodologies to make these technologies available for architects and more ready to use in the first phases of building design, so that they can look really at the possibility of these thermoactive structures at the let's say it's a component of the energy gathering or structure of the building. And here, for instance, as this is a really an emerging area in Europe, we should promote that more and more active or geoactive structures are built in Europe, and to monitor the structures and to see how they are working would be really key performance indicators that are important to follow and to really see growing in the next years. And with that, I would thank you for your attention. Just to give a snapshot of our funding request, I have put this table from our SRIA, just to give, we have more or less tried to let's say to balance what could be areas which need a more experimental or perhaps a more let's say advances from the modeling point of view, and have seen also from the past projects and the interest from the sector to come with balanced figures of budget and also a classification of TRL factor. You can see here, for instance, in the closed loop technology solutions, you have higher TRLs. Also in innovative geostructures, whether in other areas, in like area 2, new generation of high temperature UTES, we see more and more need for, let's say, for more basic research and more, let's say, fundamental advances prior to a massive deployment of this type of systems. Obviously, this can be adopted by the Commission. This can be seen as a dynamic and time evolution. But at least this is our, let's say, our offer to the Commission, and I hope they take it up. With that, I really would like to thank you for your attention, and I'm open for questions in the last part of the seminar.
Thank you very much, Javier, for this really detailed presentation. Now I will give the floor to Philippe Blom from the KIT, Cultural Institute of Technology, for presenting the chapter on system integration. Philippe, the floor is yours.
So I hope now everybody can see my screen, hopefully. Now suddenly my presentation disappeared. Okay, 1 second.
Can hear you well, see you, but indeed waiting for your presentation.
Yeah, the presentation just disappeared. That was the problem. Just in a second.
If you want, I can show you from my screen, if not. Huh?
I'm not sure why I can suddenly not share it. Have you got my presentation, or you don't have my latest presentation, no?
I can show you if you want to in the meantime.
Strange, something happened here with my system here. Okay.
Yep.
If you have it, it would be great, because I think otherwise I would have to log out because something seemed to be completely corrupted here. So it's probably not the most recent version, but I think it will do. So good. Hello from my side to everyone as well in the audience. And my name is Philip Blum. I'm from the KIT, and I would like to also acknowledge at that side actually my two colleagues who really contributed quite a lot to this part here, to this topic B, system integration. It was Luca from the University of Geneva and Martin Blumdahl from the TU in Delft. So if you forward one slide in, that would be great. So the focus area on this is actually really the system integration. So it really interacts what Javier mentioned already in his last slides. It was like that, of course, we want to push the technologies further, but now it's really the question how we can get this really to the user. And therefore, there is actually the key focus is like to quantify where we can actually have geothermal potentials close to cities or below cities. And therefore, you can see the focus will be on to question is really how we actually integrate shallow and deep geothermal systems into existing and future renewable energy systems. And that comes really to the key objective is integrating the geothermal use in both urban management and in particularly also to energy plants. So this is really that it's on the agenda of the cities, of the politicians, that geothermal should be considered all the time you do something in your urban structure or with a subsurface. Philippe, if you forward. So this is the topic B1, which is about subsurface characterization and methods. So you see the objective is, of course, that when we want to go to the user, we need to also know the subsurface. And in many areas, we don't have the data always available. We have to do site-specific investigations, project-specific investigations. And to avoid this, we want to go into the city scale and to acquire high resolution and spatial data. And therefore, we want to then reduce the specific exploration costs by combining different exploration methods and then to identify also key target areas in cities. And therefore, we have different key areas. If you forward, Philippe. And here we have the key actions. So what we want to do is what people know from deep geothermal exploration, but we want to acquire, for example, seismic profiles in cities, high resolution exploration and monitoring methods. We want to characterize the reservoir we operate, shallow and deep below cities. We want to also include new technologies like machine learning for this reservoir characterization. And also what we need is larger scale models. And of course, if we want to be very happy, we want to see all processes in our simulations. And by that, we want to then finally also minimize our operation costs for the reinjection. So what you can see, the KPI here is really to lower our costs for the exploration part and then to also optimize the timing, that we really start from the city and the energy plants. So I hope now, Philippe, if you go further, that you have the most recent versions. I doubt that you have it actually, exactly. So this is the problem now we face. So sorry for that, Philippe. So I have to share my screen, otherwise we cannot continue. Sorry for that.
You're back as a presenter.
Yes, I'm back as a presenter, but I cannot unfortunately open now my presentation. I'm not sure why this happened. Did it happen already in the past for you?
Never.
Okay, because yesterday we tried it and now it doesn't work. See, my system corrupted. So what should I do now? I can switch it off completely, but then.
What did you want to show? Something that I have on the agenda?
That it's the final presentation, you know, which I have only on my computer, which I shared only yesterday, the preliminary version of it. But unfortunately,
so maybe what we can do, we give the floor now to Riccardo Pasquali for the chapter C. In the meantime, you try to get it, and we give you the floor back when you are.
Yeah, I think it's the best to do it, because I realized I have these problems by opening the documents here on my computer.
Yeah, no, it's a technical problem always.
Yeah, okay, sorry for that interruption. So I will fix. And Ricardo, now I hope you're not drinking coffee or not somewhere else, so that you can take over now and start now with a non-technical part. Sorry for that.
No, I am here, Philippe. Good,
Very good.
afternoon, everybody. So
I give it to you now and try to organize my computer again.
Yeah, perfect. Now, can everybody see my screen now?
I confirm, all is fine.
Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rick Pasquali from GeoServe, and my role in the completion of the SRIA was to oversee the writing, and I suppose on the selection of the non-technical topics. So obviously this work of the SRIA was completed with a number of other collaborators and authors, which you will see in the front part of the document. I would just like to acknowledge all of those individuals who have helped compile this section. So as you can probably appreciate, the non-technical aspects that I want to cover today are very much interlinked with the technical and integration aspects in topic A and B that you will have heard and will hear about some more in a few moments. So really the non-technical aspect focus areas are more related to sort of the regulatory and legislative integration of the innovations and the technical and integration aspects that we have highlighted before. So the key areas of research that we feel more work needs to be included in. They focus specifically on improving public perception, public acceptance, and knowledge sharing, integrating the innovations that we feel need further research and need further consideration with the wider energy system, and in particular in the context of the heat market and the heat sector in general across Europe and in different member states. So there is another focus area which is dedicated to resource assessment and operational data compilation, and I will discuss this in a few moments. So the first of the topics that are included in the non-technical section are relating to environmental legislation, licensing and drilling regulations. You have heard in topic A, there's specific focus relating to improving drilling technology and drilling methodologies, but also in relation to looking at those intermediate depths, shall we say, so moving away from the conventional, let's say, ground source heat pump, shallow geothermal type systems, and bringing us into that space, which is from a regulatory and legislative point of view, often falls between two broad areas of legislation and regulation in member states. So we feel there is some work there to be done in terms of being able to integrate those innovations into the regulatory and legislative aspects. The same can be said for the licensing and permitting process of these intermediate depth systems, and on how this can be better streamlined, let's say, across different countries. So the final objective here of this topic relates to, I suppose, more the building integration side of it, in historical buildings in particular, and in NZEBs, certainly from a commercial and public building point of view, on trying to integrate new closed loop systems, intermediate depth geothermal systems into that building structures in the context of renovations. So there are 5 key actions with respect to topic C1, and you can see them here listed on the screen. These focus on the integration strategies of the new, let's say, geothermal systems in relation to hybrid scenarios, hybrid energy scenarios. Specifically in topic 2, the development of guidelines for the design and the completion of geostructures, which you have heard Javier mention beforehand, is an area which has been worked on across Europe, but there is no, let's say, integrated approach with respect to this. And this strongly relates to topic 3, which is the development of standards in terms of looking at some of these new systems where we exploit intermediate geothermal resources, intermediate depth geothermal resources. We utilize geostructures, and in some cases we use standing column wells, which are becoming more popular in certain European countries. So again, there probably is a body of work to be done there to improve current standards in relation to those. So the last 2 topics really focus on the regulatory aspect and the regulatory integration of these new solutions, with the first ones being particularly in topic 4 related to the regulations with respect to energy storage and hybrid solutions. So these focus on the high temperature UTES systems that you would have heard in topic A, and how these are integrated into, let's say, much broader energy systems at city scale, for example, and in district heating and cooling networks. And the final topic relates to regulations more on the geotechnical structural side of geostructures specifically. So there are 3 key performance indicators, and that's an increase in the adoption of the proposed SRIA innovations into existing EN or ISO standards, the improvement of regulations to cover the intermediate depth solutions that we've talked about, and then international best practice on the design and the completion of geostructures. So topic C2 is focused on specifically on the integration of heat pump systems, heat pump based systems to building certification and performance certification systems. And this is something I think all of the authors and the contributors to this document felt quite strongly about, where it is very important that we are able to better define the boundaries in terms of energy performance and performance design when geothermal heat pump systems are considered in terms of the implementation strategies, let's say, of implementing renewables and retrofit scenarios in NZs and in historical buildings. And it's really critical that these are looked at specifically at building design stage, so at an early stage of building design, and that the geothermal heat pump aspect or the geothermal solution can add value to that performance design very early on. So and then the last objective there is the integration strategies and certification of those buildings. So there are 4 key actions with respect to this topic. They're the development of, let's say, integration strategies, so initial design strategies, but also post-construction tools for integrating geothermal heat pump solutions. There's a specific focus on targeting what we would consider lower certification or lower certification ranked buildings, so historical or heritage buildings, which currently in the implementation of the EPBD might be sort of marginal in terms of renovation and retrofit strategies in member states due to their status. Action 3 includes the improvement of life cycle analysis assessment methodologies for geothermal heat pumps, and the final key action is the integration of geothermal heat pumps with other renewables to allow increased system efficiency. So there are 3 performance indicators with respect to these, and they are the uptake of geothermal as part of building certification schemes, improved credits or points with respect to energy and environmental categories of those certification schemes, and increased operational efficiency at the post-construction and operational side of the system. So topic C3, you will have heard mentioned earlier on, is focused with respect to resource mapping and statistical data collection. I think this is really strongly linked to some of the initial parts of topic B, which Philippe has already presented. I'm sure he will go over them again in a few minutes. But as our technological evolution, let's say, of geothermal systems continues, there is a greater, ever increasing greater need to standardize and try to align the resource mapping aspects of geothermal, allowing energy policy and heating and cooling strategies at individual member states to be more inclusive of geothermal, and to do that we need to basically achieve more harmonized methodologies that allow us to compare resources across different member states. So at the moment it's very much member state specific, and in some cases we have seen sort of broader attempts to try and quantify and integrate geothermal at a much larger scale, but this still remains difficult. So the final objective in that series relates to performance data collection from operating systems, and this is something that I will touch upon in a minute, which is really critical. So the first few topics in terms of mapping and statistical data, you can see there relate to topic 1, so a harmonized approach for system data recording across EU member states, and similar parameters, harmonization of parameters and mapping methodologies for both open loop and closed loop there in topics 2 and 3 would allow us to better understand the potential for unlocking, let's say, geothermal in terms of energy planning and energy policy going forward beyond sort of 2020. So our resource mapping needs to also be matched to local energy demands. So there has to be another level, if we want, of understanding where we can promote energy policy by matching geothermal resources with local heating and cooling demands. So there are obviously 2 more topics there. So the dissemination strategies with respect to geothermal resources, and then the final one, which is quite important, is the actual harmonized statistical data collection from geothermal systems. And certainly over the scope of the last number of years and probably the previous SRIA, we have seen that there are wide differences across Europe and across member states as to how this is achieved. And this doesn't really do our sector any favors in terms of trying to understand the benefits of our technologies. So the key performance indicators in this case are the adoption of common resource assessment strategies across the EU, an increased share of the deployment of geothermal, I suppose, across the EU as well, and a more complete, let's say, and uniform integration in terms of energy policy, but particularly focused on emerging markets where geothermal may be present, whether it's shallow, intermediate, or deep, but is not actively integrated, let's say, into current energy policy or energy planning. And the final one is trying to harmonize SPF reporting structures for geothermal heat pumps, which relates to topic 6 outlined on the slide. So topic 4 deals specifically with public acceptance and the development of new business models for geothermal systems. The objectives of this topic are really focused on local communities and local community engagements, and specifically on the socio-economic impacts of deep and larger scale shallow geothermal projects, allowing to decrease the risk perception associated with these, which is something which remains quite high, I think, across Europe. So the key actions, there are 4 there you can see on the screen. There are basically procedures for increasing acceptability based on local legislation. There are procedures and guidelines and business models for long-term assurance to communities, increased public engagement strategies in topic 3 there, and in particular engagement with sustainable energy communities, and topic 4, new business models for geothermal developers. So the key performance indicators in this case are increased community acceptance, decrease of environmental concerns and perceived risks of these associated projects, and then finally the adoption of common geothermal public acceptance strategies, which can be clearly outlined and documented. So the final topic in the non-technical section is the design of geothermal risk mitigation schemes. This is a topic which basically continues on from the previous SRIA. There are, I suppose, current projects working on this topic at the moment, but it really requires a lot more work in terms of trying to develop European-wide geothermal risk mitigation schemes, and in particular trying to migrate these schemes into less mature markets and allowing a sort of more level playing field as to how these risk mitigation schemes are distributed to support the development of the sector. And then the final objective for this one is also to look at the financial supports and how these would work. So there are 3 key action areas here. One is the analysis of the legal barriers that apply in different member states with respect to the development of these risk mitigation schemes, particularly associated with deep geothermal projects and with the heat market. The second action relates to the administration and development of risk mitigation schemes for specific projects and member states, so a more market specific and based approach. And then the third one is the actual launch of a scheme of this kind with demonstration projects in emerging markets. So perhaps extending, let's say, the reach of where current risk mitigation measures are being implemented. So there are 3 performance indicators: the increased number of member states where risk mitigation RMS risk mitigation schemes and projects would be applicable, the decrease of, let's say, the legal barriers to implement these schemes, and finally the financial supports associated with them over a minimum period of operation. So in my last 2 slides here, this slide basically shows you the requested funding for the non-technical topics. You can see the 5 topics there listed on the left-hand side. You can see the TRL levels really are expected to be quite high, and there are some indicative budgets here for the various topics. And then my last slide is a broad overview of the implementation plan for the non-technical topics. Again, you can find this in more detail in the SRIA document, and you can see the proposed rollout of the key areas discussed across the period of 6 years there that you can see on the screen. So I will say thank you very much for listening, and I'm sure you any questions can be discussed during the final session.
Thank you, Rick, for your detailed presentation. And now we'll try to get back to Philip Bloom to see if he can deliver the end of his presentation. Philip?
Okay, let's try this time. So now you should be able, okay. Now you should see it, correct?
I confirm.
This time it works. So back again from Rick, what he was talking about, non-technical aspects. I will talk about now the kind of aspects which are between what Javier was saying at the beginning, the technology aspects and the technology development. And I was talking about the subsurface characterization. So it kind of links together what Rick was mentioned with the mapping, but here it's really also the site investigation and the modeling. And the KPI you can see here is was the cost of exploration optimization. The topic 2 is the resource management itself. And this in particularly when you have dense installations already, what you, for example, also face already in Holland. And there we want to find like effective and sustainable use of the subsurface space by all different technology where we discussed already, but this also in a dense urban environment. And therefore, we also have to consider the kind of structures which Javier was mentioning, like, for example, subways and tunnels already, or also not like new geotextures in the cities. Yeah, so we have to consider all these interactions. What are the key actions here is, of course, the optimal use. And in particular, we want to also look at the subsurface urban heat island and the effect of the existing system. So we heat up the subsurface. We have seen this in many European cities already, that we heat up the subsurface, not only by geothermal energy, but in particular from other infrastructures and buildings. And there we want to look what is the impact on shadow geothermal energy, for example. And therefore, we want to then come to best practice for specific subsurfaces. And this is this land use plans, what we want to develop in European cities, and to get really into strategies how we can place the systems optimal in a city environment. And I maybe not mention all points, you can read them by yourself because we're running out of time a little bit and that we have enough time for questions. So I come here now also to the key performance indicator, which is the adoption level to underground storage systems in cities, and that we can use quite a large percentage in the subsurface of the city for geothermal applications. This comes now to the really technical topic again, which is really to develop hybrid models. You can read this. This is the city building and subsurface core simulations model. So currently we have models from the subsurface, but often what is lacking really is the model which integrates all of that into a building model. So this is really addressing the issue of the interaction between the two, between the subsurface and the surface. So we really have to get out of the ground in a way to talk to people who do the building simulation models, that we get also combined models. And therefore we have different key actions for that. So of course we want to optimize the performance, and therefore we need to integrate our subsurface model in the building energy models, or vice versa. We have to integrate the building energy models into the subsurface models. So we really have to look for synergies of the subsurface users. There are all different users in the cities, and of course for the demand of the building environment. So we need to know where we actually can place geothermal systems optimum in an urban environment. So we have to identify the hotspots where it's really feasible, for example, for cooling and heating. And there we have the option of using geothermal systems for that. So you see, we want to have co-simulation tools to really address the heating and cooling assessment and the planning, and also the geothermal consultancy. So these models should be also applicable in the field, and not only just some R&D codes from universities. So you see the last key action is to have really combined models, and not then only consider the geothermal source, but also to really look at other renewable energy. So we really are in a competitive environment where we want to also look at these systems in combination or also in a competition, and to evaluate for which location or urban environment the best solution of renewables we can have. So it's really the integration of geothermal systems in an urban management and as I mentioned earlier, also in this energy planning on a city scale. So that comes to the topic 4, which is the system integration, which I mentioned already. So we want to integrate not only geothermal, but also to kind of evaluate between the different technologies. This is also what Rick already mentioned. And to do that, we have like 3 key actions here, which is the integration of geothermal into other renewables for buildings, integration also in smart districts for the future. So this is, we talk about new districts here, but also then also into other industries in agriculture and industry. And here in particular, we want to address deep geothermal energy with higher temperatures. And what we all want to do is, of course, to get a decrease in our installation costs. So this comes to the final topic, which is then the smart energy system and the integration. So it's the optimization of different parts in the surface system to decarbonize the energy system in a total. For that, we have 4 key actions here: the planning and realization of geothermal part of source to sink district heating and cooling networks. So we also need the tools to do that, which you can have seen in topic 3. Then we need energy system model to definition to the site-specific contribution to deep, or I would say also shallow geothermal energy in a complex environment of different types of heating and cooling networks. And then what mentioned before is the integration of deep geothermal heat to agriculture, food, and industrial processes. And in this particular topic, we also want to have a large-scale development of demonstration projects. And again, the key PI is the cost reduction. So of course, requested funding, I put some picture in here so that you have seen this figure here. You can also look up this figure again in the document, and you will see that there's a distribution of this allocation of the money. And of course, we have not that high technical research levels like what Rick has shown, so the technical research level can be also lower, in particularly when you look at B3, for example, when it comes to the development of hybrid models. The implementation plan is similar what you have seen before. I won't go into details here, but you can see the program runs from 21 to 2072. And of course, we want to finish with really demonstration projects to demonstrate that we can actually apply geothermal systems in an urban environment. And for that, I thank you for your attention and pass over to Philippe.
Thank you very much, all of you, for your kind presentation. Really interesting. Maybe now we can have some oral questions. We have one for you, Javier, from Mr. Victor Vicol. The question to you, Javier, is that is the BIM system used for the integration of specialties and architecture in the design of any geotechnical project?
Is the BIM, you mean building integration modeling?
Yeah, I assume.
I don't.
I will see if Mr. Vicol is there. We can maybe try to give him the floor to further develop his question. Yeah, he's there.
Ah, yeah.
You can
Hello,
ask
hi.
orally your question, yes. The floor is yours. Mr. Victor Vicol, we give you the floor for an oral question.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you ask your question orally regarding the BIM system?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm asking you if you know any geothermal project that use BIM, building information modeling, for integrate all the specialties when we try to create a geothermal project. Because I'm wondering, because here in Romania we are working with BIM for other kind of energetic projects, and we have very good results. And that's why I'm wondering if it is used for geothermal too. BIM,
Okay,
if you know, or
yes,
okay.
I know about geothermal use of
I can hear you very well.
Okay, Mr. Javier, we got your question, and Javier is about to answer you. Okay, Javier, floor is yours.
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay, I am aware of the use of PIM with geothermal. So as any other energy technology, it is certainly used as a model, as an object, and can be utilized with PIM without any problem.
Okay, thank you. The second question is about ATES. I don't know who wants to answer that. Roland Rogen is saying that I miss, in my opinion, an important innovative development into sustainable heating solution. ATES system, so aquifer thermal energy storage system, combined with external heat source, especially aquathermics, so surface water, sewage water, has a lot of potential. Would this fit in this topic? Combination of ATES with another source.
Yeah,
I think it comes to the question of system integration, and therefore we have an entire topic for that. So that's, you can see that's quite an important part of it. So we should not see any of the technologies anymore very much isolated. So we are in a competition, and I think we have very good tools available, for example, the ATES system, to actually integrate exactly what you have just mentioned, just some surplus energy which is somewhere around in the cities. And therefore, quite an important part in the evaluation is also to see where are the heating demands and where are the cooling demands, and where are actually additional industrial sources of heat and cooling, which we can then integrate into, for example, district heating or cooling systems. So that's specifically addressed.
Thank you, Philippe, for this question. And I think that's all. We don't have any more questions. So last round. Or you answer, or you ask a question in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we can give you the question. Oh yes, one for you, Rick, maybe the last one, because we are approaching the end, 2030. So Rick, the question for you from Mr. Thomas Rozowski. What are the main legal barriers for geothermal drilling?
Well, there are many. The whole point, I think, of the non-technical aspects is that these barriers change across different member states. They're generally quite localized. They are different with respect to shallow geothermal systems and deep geothermal systems. And I think what we need to do is to try somehow and overcome these barriers to allow geothermal to be more streamlined and I suppose more easily accessible in terms of a solution for heating and cooling. So that doesn't really answer your question, because the barriers are so local and so specific that I think we would probably take quite some time. But it is one of the key topics that we want to address in the non-technical aspects.
Yeah, indeed, we can confirm, because we work on that in EGEC. The legal barrier could be on licensing and procedure, but also on social regulation.
Social.
Many topics indeed. But we are planning to develop several activities within EGEC, a working group on drilling. So yeah, of course, it's high importance on that. Okay, it's a good friend, so maybe we can also accept a question from Elsa Cristina Ramayo. I don't know who wants to answer that. Is harmonizing parameters among the European countries is important? Is there a concrete project? So harmonizing parameters.
Is this in the non-technical barriers? So are we talking about harmonizing the methodologies on how we quantify the resources and how we record the data? This is absolutely critical. We find many differences across member states as to how resources are mapped, whether they are for shallow geothermal or for deep geothermal resources, and actually even more importantly from a statistical point of view and how geothermal heat pumps perform at the operational stage. There are either some ways where the SPFs are reported in some member states and in some markets, and in others this is very rarely done. It's generally the nameplate of what is on the heat pump. So it really is a big area for trying to improve and standardize our approach as a sector.
Okay, thank you, Rick. And I think with that, we can close the Q&A session. And I will give the floor to Javier for the final word of conclusion.
Okay, yes, let me thank you all for let's say, these excellent presentations from the rest of panelists, of course, and for the interesting questions that were raised during the discussion. Thank you for the moderation, Philippe. I hope we can, with this, let's say, this presentation, to read it and to have it and take it into account in your thinking about the possible projects, possible collaborations within the sector. As you can see, the challenges are there, but we hope that with the contribution of all of us, that they can be
Okay, we have some connection problem with Valencia in Spain.
Hello?
Yeah, you have been stopped for some seconds, so maybe I will give you
sorry,
a
sorry very much. We have problems with the connection here in the university.
But I think, yeah, you wanted to thank everybody. Indeed, we have to thank you again, Rick and Philippe. Of course, thank you, Javier, for your current presentation. Thank you all participants for your information. We are more than 150 people. We are still 100 people, so a lot of interest about all these activities. Indeed, geothermal is more and more mentioned and referred as a solution for the decarbonization. So we are glad to see so much interest. Thank you also for the EGEC team for all the logistics and organization, Valeria and Courtney. And with that, we wish you a good end of the day. I don't know, Javier, connection is back. If you want to say goodbye. No, I think it's over. So Rick, thank you again. Philippe, thank you again. Have a nice day. Bye.
Goodbye,
everybody. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.